Aloha, shining ones! Thank you for watching the replay. Instagram is telling everyone that I'm going live. So, the aforementioned shower did not happen. My hair is still kind of crazy, but I prefer it down. So, aloha! Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy to be here, proving to you once again as an example that it is perfectly capable for you to be a hot mess and still have a message to share and still have magic to give and still serve your community, and it's all okay. Yay! Welcome, welcome. Hello, Rainbow Light. Hello, Elizabeth. Hi, Shelly. Hi, Jade. So many people coming in. Hello, Genevieve. Hello, Haley. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, my beautiful magic tribe, shining ones. I'm so happy to be here with you. And so today on this Instagram Live, I am so excited to talk to you about the Ascendant sign, your rising sign in your astrology chart. And this is really kind of the doorway and the gateway to your astrology chart. And I'm probably just going to talk about one of my favorite ways to talk about the chart and how it shows up. We'll see where we go. And we're also going to talk about what can you do if you do not know your birth time and you're not able to figure out what your rising sign is. So, aloha everyone. So I'm just going to do a few things to get myself set up. So while I am doing that, if you know your rising sign, hey Ben, if you know your rising sign, go ahead and find the emoji that corresponds to your rising sign and type it in so we know who's here. Oh, she's already on it. There you go. So you're typing in your rising sign. If you don't know, just let everybody that you don't know. Hi, Leanna. Yay. Hi, Liana. I have my friend Leanda too. I was like, Leanda, Liana. She's here too, apparently. Okay. Oh my goodness, there's so many Libra risings. I think I've seen three in a row. Exactly. I think that's the fourth one. Virgos. Aloha, welcome. So we're typing in our rising signs to start. Okay, so, all right. Aries rising, Scorpio rising, another Aries. I'm Sagittarius rising. We'll talk about why that's funny in a minute and how you can totally tell. Yay. Okay, so what is the rising sign? So, you guys ready for a little mini astrology lesson? Hope so, because that's what we're doing. So, you can see my handy dandy chart here. So, the rising sign is the time when you were born. And so, what happens in the cosmos, in our solar system, is that there is, there's the sun and there are the planets that are in their orbits around our sun. That makes up our solar system. And so there is a push-pull conversation that happens between the sun and all of the different planets. And so because it was not for the gravitational pull of the sun anchoring our planets into their orbits, the planets would just go, they're like, bye. So there is this conversation of the planets pulling out into their orbit and the sun pulling them back in. And so there's this mathematical calculation of this conversation that is this push-pull that's happening that is encoded into the sun that is then wafted out into our solar system on the solar winds. And when that solar wind encounters the Earth's magnetic sphere, then sometimes that creates the aurora borealis. But that is the alchemy of the conversation that was encoded in the solar rays, that the solar winds, that is now alchemically combining with the Earth's magnetic grid. And when you are first born, the first ceremony that you go through in this earthly experience is the ceremony of air. And so you take your first breath and you breathe in that calculation, that conversation of what was happening in the cosmos and the alchemical merging of that conversation with the Earth's magnetic grid. And that gets encoded into every single one of your cells when you participate in that first ceremony of air by taking your first breath. So fun. I love explaining it like that. So that moment is the moment of your rising sign. Hi, Sasha. And so that moment is the moment of your rising sign, and that is what starts your whole chart. And so your rising sign always happens over here at the 9 o'clock position on your chart. I know, this is why astrology is so important. So your rising sign always happens. If you think of this as a clock, this is the 9 o'clock position. This is always where your rising sign falls. And so this is like a map of the Earth. So this is the eastern horizon when you were born. And so you look at that moment in time, that minute and hour, when you took your first breath, you entered into the first ceremony of air, you sealed in your astrological imprint into your cells, into your DNA. And so in that moment, there was a constellation on the eastern horizon where you were born. That's why the place is important too. That was just rising on the horizon line. And so that is what makes up your ascendant. And so then across here, you have your descendant, which is the opposite. That's the western sky. So in the western sky, right now, as the sun is setting, the sun is like, it's going down, and it's combined with, it's in the sign of Sagittarius right now. And but the rising sign of this moment is the sign that is also descending at the western horizon right now. So this is the western horizon in the moment you were born. This is the eastern horizon. This is what the stars were doing in the sky. Everything below those two lines is underneath the Earth, and everything that is above those two lines, I need to turn the light down, but everything that was above those two lines is what was visible in the sky. So that is how your astrological chart is formed and made, in one sense of explaining it. So that is why it's important to know your birth date, time, and place in order to get that rising sign correct. So, and we'll talk about what to do if you don't know your birth time in a minute. So why that is also important in the type of astrology that I do, because there's other types of astrology, like archetypal astrology and different kinds of astrology, where the placement of the houses is not as, the placement of the planets in the houses is not in that system as important as the combinations and the relationships that the planets are having to each other. So, but for me, I love context. I'm a Sagittarius rising, and so being able to understand the whole picture, being able to understand the context of how the larger overview of how all of the pieces fit together is really important. And my Mercury is right on my ascendant, so it's really important for my intellectual understanding of how the world works to know the placement of things. So that's just an example of why all this is important too. And to know that it's like, I'm not a crazy person. Like, that's the way that my brain works. This is why I love astrology, because it's like I can relax into who I am and be like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. It's right there. So the rising sign places the exact degree. We can zoom in here. So this is rising. This chart is a sample chart. It's rising at 17 degrees Gemini. And so I totally have a good answer. I'm going to second that in a second. The rising sign is the exact degree that was rising, the constellation that was rising when you were born. So that actually begins the placement of your chart. And it's just like, so the rest of your chart is like dominoes. And so the rising sign is like the first domino that goes down, and then all of the other, hi Becky, hi Lisa, all of the other dominoes go, and that is all of the planets falling into the place, the grid of your chart that is designated and begins with your rising sign and with the exact degree that sign is beginning at for you. So that will place the sun in a particular house in addition to the sign that it's in, and that will place all of the planets in particular houses, and there's different meanings of the different houses. We're not going to get into that today, but it really helps to knowing your rising sign and knowing how everything falls in the house system. And so I use Placidus. I think I'm saying that correctly. Some people say Placidius, but I think there's not two I's. So I'm using Placidus, and that is the most common house system. There are also lots and lots and lots of other house systems, but I choose to use the house system of Placidus because it's the most commonly, it's basically like choosing to speak a common language in the country where you're in order to be able to communicate with the people. The Placidus house system is generally the most commonly used house system, and so that's why I choose to use it and teach on it, so that you guys can easily have conversations once you start getting the language of astrology into your it's not that you're getting it into your body, because it already lives inside your body, but you begin to evoke it from yourself. You remember how to speak it, and you remember that the planets and the signs and the archetypal energies that they represent, they're not foreign to you. That's the thing I want you to know so much, is that astrology is not this complicated language. It's just a language that we don't have words for, right? So it's like, or that we don't speak those words, so we've forgotten them. And so astrology does not have to be complicated, because you are fully and completely aware of all of the elements that and how they interact with you every single day. And through those elements, you can be aware, once you bring it into your conscious mind, of all of the planets and all of the signs. And so someone comes in, for example, it's like when it was my dad was visiting, and it was the Scorpio full moon, and we were at the farmer's market, and we find ourselves in front of this truck where there's this guy who's sharpening knives, which is like a total Scorpio thing. And we start talking to him, and he starts telling us about how he secretly has this YouTube channel, and he's actually like famous on the internet, but he doesn't tell people on Maui about that. Maybe I'm telling his secrets. Maybe I shouldn't tell the story, but I won't tell you who it is. But anyway, so he's YouTube famous, and he's like concerned about like what people might think about that. So he's like, I've never told this to anybody before. I don't know why I'm telling you this, which is like secrets, which is also like a Scorpio thing. And full moons illuminate things that have been hidden. And so he's like this like living example of like Scorpio full moon frequency, this man who's sharpening knives telling us his secrets. And I was just like, there it is. So when you learn, it's basically like you just have to like have eyes to see, to remember how to interpret these things that are in your life all the time. And that is why it's so important. What is beyond astrology? I'm not sure what you mean about that. I'm glad you like the explanation of the dominoes. Vedic system. So I use, this is kind of a little bit out of topic, but I'll answer it really quickly. So I used to be super into the Vedic system. There was a beautiful man who was an astrologer who was one of Amma's astrologers. And he was so good that Amma told him he had to go on his own tour, not with her. And so I was seeing him once per year in mid-2000s, late 2000s. And isn't it so funny that we say that now? So I was super into Vedic astrology for a long time. And so Vedic astrology and sidereal astrology are based on what you actually see in the sky. So if I take my little app, my Star Walk app on my phone, and I look up in the sky and I see that the sun is actually in Scorpio, not in Sagittarius right now. And so that is what, so they say that. So the reason that Vedic astrology and sidereal astrology have that is because they take into account the wobble of the earth and the precession of the equinoxes, whereas Western astrology does not. Western astrology was calculated in advance. There's all of these charts known as the ephemeris, and that's what the astrology comes from, is all of these charts, not from what's actually happening in the sky. So I was really upset about this for a very long time. And I was like, lies! They're telling us lies! Like, this what? Like, you're telling me that the sun is in Sagittarius when clearly it is in Scorpio? Like, what is going on? How are we supposed to build the new earth if the spiritual people are being lied to? And so I was very upset about it for a very long time, until one of my friends, who is also an astrologer, she was like, and she also did archetypal astrology, and she was really well versed in mythology and the subconscious effects that mythology and stories have on us and on our psyches. And so she was saying, I don't know about you guys, but I totally grew up in my grandmother's house reading about the Greek myths. And so it is woven, the mythology of the Greeks and the Romans in our Western culture is so woven in to the reality that we experience that we don't even see it. Superhero movies, like archetypal masculine feminine dynamics, they're all being acted out through the lens of the Greek and the Roman gods, because this like mythology is like so inherently inside of us. It's like we're in the forest and we can't see it. And so longer story, I know from my own personal healing journey how the stories that we tell ourselves do truly change our realities. I used to have an autoimmune disease that they told me I would have forever. I do not have it anymore. It's been over 10 years, 15 years since I have had that experience. So I know that stories are powerful. And I know that the stories that we tell ourselves can literally change the world that we live in. And so what was made aware to me was that these stories that are so woven into our collective consciousness are actually, in the Western culture, more powerful than what is actually happening in the sky. And so it's like this meaning that we've attributed to these stories overrides what's happening in the physical world, because that's what happens in our bodies. That is the science of epigenetics, is that our beliefs can literally mutate ourselves and create different experiences in our bodies. So that is why I use Western astrology and not Vedic astrology. I love Vedic astrology. I think it is very accurate and appropriate for Eastern cultures, because that is what their culture is based on, is the mythology of that. So I do still acknowledge Rahu and Ketu in the nodes. I love the nodes. I'm going to do a whole different Instagram live on the nodes because I am fascinated by how we can find our soul purpose, our mission that we came to share in the world, and how we can resource our past lives, which is Ketu that's the south node, into how we can basically transmute our karma into our dharma. That's what I am here to explore, fascinated to understand, and talk about it every single day. So that is, yes, we changed the story. I still don't, like, rephrase again, what is beyond astrology? And I'll answer that towards the end because I want to make sure to go through everything. Okay. So because you were saying important to be aware of that, what is beyond astrology? I mean, like, our free will is what is beyond astrology, right? And so astrology is not, this is not like you will do this and you will do that and this will happen and all of this and it's like you can't avoid it. That's definitely not what happens, because someone, with a moon in Aries in the third house that is square to Chiron, that can manifest in like 52 different ways. It's that we have complete free choice in how to work with the archetypal energies. That's why it's so important to remember these astrological frequencies and to remember the language of the stars so that you can be in conscious conversation. So, for example, if you have a Saturn transit, like I did at the beginning of this year, you're at your desk, you're doing the work, you're putting in the time, you're putting in the effort, you're putting in the energy, you are building the legacy that you are here to leave, and you are being very responsible about every single part of your life. And so you're like, everything that I'm saying right now are key words for the Saturn archetype. And so I knew that was coming. I could see it in my chart. So I chose to go out and ask Saturn if he would like to dance, as opposed to hiding in my closet and like hoping that it's not too bad. And so because it's just like, if you're not in collaboration with the planetary energies, they are coming for you. So it's like, especially ones that can be, quote unquote challenging, that really force you to look at your shit. And so when you know that you're having a Pluto transit, when you know that you're having a Saturn transit, you are out there working with the energy, collaborating with the planetary archetypes. And then it's not as bad because it's like you started the momentum as opposed to standing still. It's like surfing. You're in the water, you're paddling so you can catch the wave, as opposed to being standing on the shoreline with your back to the ocean and suddenly... Yes. Yeah. And it really transmutes all of these stereotypes that we have about Saturn or Chiron or Pluto being like malefic or challenging or bad or evil or things like that. It's really all invitations for us to self-initiate. That's why it's important. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so that is why it's important to know your rising sign. Going back to the rising sign, that's why it's important to know your rising sign, so that you get the accurate placement of all of the planets into your chart. And this is really important, specifically in many ways, but specifically for also understanding how the slower moving planets affect you personally. So for something like, any of the outer planets, Saturn, Jupiter to some extent, but Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, all of the outer planets, and Chiron, they are going to be in the same signs for your whole age group, for your whole generation. And so the sign that your Chiron is in, or the sign that your Pluto is in, is not really relevant to you personally. That just tells you about what your age group, what your cohort is going through. But the house placement for you is very, very important. And so we'll talk about different planets in different houses and what that can mean for you. That can also tell you, so for Pluto, for example, I love looking to see where Pluto is in the chart, because not only is that where you will be the place, the house, where you will be eternally transmuting and transforming yourself, dying and being reborn over and over and over, but that is also where you have unlimited energy to do and perform the attributes of that house. And so it's really helpful because you're obsessed. You're obsessed with wherever your Pluto is, you're obsessed with the aspects of that chart or of that house, the attributes of that house. And so it's really helpful to know that, so that you can resource that energy towards that house, and you know that you have unlimited energy for that particular house situation. So, but that's what we're talking about again later this week. So, what if you don't know your rising sign? That is something that I am always asked. So, if you don't know your rising sign, there is a solution. You can totally still have an astrology reading. If you don't know what time you were born, your mom says she can't remember, all of these kinds of things, they didn't write it down on your birth certificate, it happens all the time. So, number one, think creatively. I've totally had this story with one of my students where she did not know what time she was born, didn't book an astrology reading for a long time because of it, and then was at her mom's house and found a photo album with a picture when she was born of her in the nurse's arms, and behind her there was a clock. So the universe works in mysterious ways. Wisdom can come to you at any time when you are ready for it. So the rising sign, the rising sign and your ascendant, that is the mechanics of the rising sign is basically your default programming about how you show up when you meet new people, when you're in new situations, when you are in uncomfortable situations with people that you know already or in places that you know already. So the rising sign reveals itself to you when you first meet somebody or when they first meet you, when you're in uncomfortable situations or when you are in new situations that are also uncomfortable because they're new. It doesn't have to be negative, right? Uncomfortable is not necessarily negative, it's just different. So, when you learn about the different attributes of the different signs, so like Aries is going to be someone who is an initiator. They're not someone who's going to be like sitting back against the wall, like surveying the scene. They're going to be like, okay, like here I am. What's your name? What do you do? Like, you know, they want to initiate the conversation. Whereas somebody with Scorpio rising, they're totally over there. They're totally over there feeling it out, like watching the power dynamics of how the room is flowing. And when they do finally get into conversation with someone, they're like, no chit chat, let's go deep, you know? So there's the mechanics. And so I go into all of this way more detail in the Astro Empowerment course. So that's kind of the mechanics of how the rising sign operates. And you can watch it in yourself. So like for me, I'm a Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius is like the teacher, the philosopher, the adventurer, the explorer. Some of the archetypes are that. And so like when I lived in San Francisco, and it happens all the time here too, but in this specific example, I was living in the city, and whenever I would get into a Lyft or an Uber and there was someone who wanted to chat, who would, you know, I would start chatting with them, invariably, within the first 5 minutes, I was teaching them about something esoteric, which is like totally classic Sagittarius rising. So I could just watch that and be like, there it is. There it is. That's me. Like, you know, or even with my mom, you know, it's like, or my parents, you know, it's like something happens, the conversation gets awkward, And then suddenly I'm like witnessing myself prattling off about like something, and I'm like I'm like subconsciously like gone into a teaching moment, and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling awkward, so I'm in my rising sign. I'm like teaching something. So, which makes it great for doing Instagram lives, because I then feel awkward and then just start teaching something. So that's the mechanics of the rising sign. And so this can help you if you don't know your rising sign. This can help you to do some detective work to find out what your rising sign is. Or if you don't know if you want to know someone's chart and you don't know their chart, but you're kind of like, like I totally feel like they are an Aquarius rising, because they're a little aloof, but then when we start talking about aliens and technology and like innovation and all this stuff. So you can just like feel into what that could be. So it is totally possible to do a little detective work to discover what your rising sign is if you do not know your birth date. Your birth time. Everybody knows their birth date. Most people do. But so that's one thing that you can do. So the other thing that's important to note about the rising sign is that it is important for you to know what sign that is rising for you, and to be aware of the attributes of that sign. And if there are any planets, like someone mentioned that they have Lilith on their ascendant. So if there are any planets on your ascendant, either above or below, like within 10 degrees. So for example, in this chart, this is 17 degrees rising in Gemini, but there are not any planets here. So this person is going to be a more pure, or not pure, but it's like they're not holier or whatever, but it's like a more clear and straightforward transmission of Gemini frequency compared to if they had Pluto 5 degrees above or below their rising sign. Then they would be Gemini rising, but they also could appear like a Scorpio rising, because Pluto is the planet that rules Scorpio. So so this is the part that is important for all of my boss babes and guys and anybody who's wanting to win friends and influence people. So working your rising sign, knowing the attributes of the sign, and knowing the qualities and the attributes of the planets that are above or below your rising sign, and integrating those. Integrating those means, I feel like I need to turn on the light. Integrating those means that you are aware of the attributes of that planet, of those signs, and you begin to embody those frequencies. You begin to embody those attributes. When you do that, it's kind of like, so the rising sign is how other people see you, and when you know how they are seeing you, it's almost kind of like you are able to step outside of yourself, view yourself through the lens that they are perceiving you, because you have this whole other idea about who you are, because you know your sun sign, you know your moon sign, you have all of your Mars and your Venus and your Mercury, and you know the whole picture. You feel it, at least if you don't know it, you feel it within you. And so you feel so much more yourself than what people are seeing in the rising sign. But when you embody the frequencies, so for everybody who is a Libra rising in here, to embody the frequencies of the ambassador, of the peacekeeper, of the person who is really tuned into the harmonics of what each situation needs, and is able to balance the scales by doing this or not doing this, or adjusting the frequencies. So that's the archetype of Libra. And we also had Aries rising. So to know if you're Aries rising, you know and acknowledge that you are a bold person, and that if it seems like you're coming off a little bit intense, then that's okay. It's almost like the more that you own and acknowledge that intensity and choose to embody that, as opposed to feeling like there's something wrong with you, basically the more that you own the attributes of the sign that is your rising sign, the more comfortable people will feel in meeting you. Because it's like, instead of when you are unaware of your rising sign or the planets that are around your rising sign, and other people meet you and they see and sense those frequencies, but you're not showing them, then it's kind of like there's just like a tiny path through the woods. I know, right? You wish you would have known this a long time ago. That's why we have to educate everybody that we can, as often as we can, as much as we can. That's why I'm beating the drum of astrology right now, because this is so important. So, for example, I was working with a woman a while ago who has the asteroid Astrea on her ascendant, just like 3 degrees below her ascendant line. And she is a starseed. That's what she like knows herself as. And Astrea is the star maiden. She's the asteroid that's known as the star maiden. And we go into all of the asteroids in Astro Empowerment, and Marley's gonna be there. And but she was withholding herself. She was feeling these starseed frequencies within her, but she was feeling like that the people that she was around wouldn't get it, they wouldn't understand, that she would be chastised or shamed in some way for being herself. And so she was not exercising, she was not showing, she was not embodying her starseed energy, her starseed frequency, her innate star maiden energy. And so it was weird for other people, because it's a subconscious thing. So they are seeing and sensing this star maiden, star seed frequency in her, but she's not embodying it, she's not talking about it, she's not living and breathing it, she's not speaking the language of the star seed frequency to the people that she meets for the first time. And so there's this like dissonance where the people who are meeting her are like, there's something happening, but she's not talking about it, she's not acknowledging it, but I feel it, and this is all subconscious. But it's this subtle dynamic that happens where it's like, they're like, what is going on? So then there's kind of this like, it's like this difficulty in meeting people and connecting with people, because she was feeling ashamed of what was inherently her birthright. So that's why it's so important to be able to know and understand the planetary frequencies. If you have Pluto on your ascendant, if you have Jupiter in your first house, if your sun is in your first house, whatever is happening in your first house that's near your ascendant, it's so important. And the sign of your ascendant, it's so important for you to embody those frequencies in a conscious way, in order for you to be more accessible to the people that you're here to help in this lifetime. So, does anybody have any questions? Yes, we are here to embody the astrological frequencies. This is blowing your mind. You've only recently found out about your rising sun and moon. Welcome! Happy birthday! This is the beginning of the rest of your life. Yes. So, if you guys are unfamiliar, I currently am enrolling for my Astro Empowerment course. This is a 6-month immersion. This is one of my favorite courses because it is so luxurious. We have so much time to go through all of the different energies. If you want to find your chart for free, you can go to astro.com. The website is called Astrodienst, but you go to astro.com, you put in all of your information, and you will be able to get your chart for free. Do I explain people's charts like this? If I get a chart, like if you have a session with me, yes, definitely. I totally explain all of this for you if you do a session for me. Liana did the course. She said it's amazing. Everyone sign up. So I totally can do this for you. But your birth chart is the most amazing, as my teacher says, your birth chart is the most amazing mystery novel that you will never finish. And so while it is totally helpful to have a reading from a professional astrologer, I totally see my astrologer every 6 months. It is also important, in my opinion, for you to be able to read and interpret your own chart so that you can integrate, I'm going to turn on another light, so that you can integrate these frequencies and work with these astrological energies and weave them into your daily life so that you don't always have to be running to me or to someone else. I'm like, I would much rather teach you how to fish than to give you a fish. And so I am teaching everyone who signs up for the Astro Empowerment course, how to fish in the stars. That's my nickname that I got when I was 14, is Starfish. So in the Astro Empowerment course, we go through all of the different planets. We go through all of the different signs. You have 2 weeks between when each of the modules drops to integrate. We have our private group space where you can ask me questions. You can put screenshots of your chart. Everybody can look at your chart together. We can all learn and grow together. We talk about all of the planets, all of the signs. We talk about all of the houses. We talk about how to do exactly what I was saying, resource your past life karma and how to find that in your chart and how to transmute that into your dharma, which is your path of service, the path of your soul's evolution, and how you can find clues for how to do that in your chart. And like I said, astrology does not overwrite your free will. So the path of your soul's evolution, there are clues in your chart, and we're going to talk about that on another Instagram Live this week, but it does not tell you how you should apply these attributes. It just gives you the flavor of what your past lives were, and there are multiple places where you find your past life information in your chart, and then it just gives you the flavor of how you can transmute your karma from your past lives into your dharma and to be of greatest service in this world, in this lifetime. We also talk about all of the asteroids. All of the asteroids are goddesses, and so that brings a beautiful feminine frequency into the chart as opposed to all of the normal planets that are usually done in the chart, which are all male except for Venus and the moon. And they really bring a more nuanced understanding of your chart, as we were talking about with our sister who had Estrella on her ascendant. We also talk about soul purpose and how to find the planets in your chart that show you where you have a natural obsession and determination, how you can resource that energy, where you have natural luck in your chart and how to use that, and where you can find the areas of your chart that show you how you can generate long-term success and financial abundance through resourcing your gifts. And we also talk about how to look at your chart and the different planetary energies in your chart and their relationships to understand the unique challenges and blessings that you chose to come into this life to learn and grow from, and how you can resource those, how you can work with those planets as spirit guides in order to receive the most benefit from all of those challenges and blessings. And we also go through how to see the astrological weather, so you can, on any day, at any time, sit down at your kitchen table, open up an app, look at the astrological weather of that day, and look how it influences your chart, and know what you should be focusing on for that day, where the invitations are from the particular planets that are activated in your chart, and how you can really work with those energies in the most productive and beneficial way, which is a game changer. That will be the thing that you will do every day for the rest of your life, and you will thank me forever for it. Or if you get it somewhere else, I don't care if you get it from me, but it's just like, get this information in your awareness so that you can do this for yourself. That's the most empowering thing you can do. And then we also talk about planetary rites of passage. So there are slower moving planets that move through your chart at a slower pace, and they provide you with different planetary initiations and rites of passage. Many people have heard of the Saturn return. Dun, dun, dun. And so the Saturn return is a powerful rite of passage that happens in your life when you're like 29, 30, 31, even into 32, depending on how it all flows out in your chart. And there's also something that happens before the Saturn return that many people mistake for the Saturn return. And so that's kind of when you're in your late 20s and you're like, what the fuck is my life? I'm feeling so emotional. What's going on? And so we'll talk about how to resource that. There's what happens in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and beyond that is available to you as rites of passage that are activations and initiations that, when worked with consciously, can really, really, really enrich your life and take your service that you are here to share with the world to the next level. So, does anybody have any questions? Enrollment for Astro Empowerment is open now. The doors are closing on Friday, the 20th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. That is an earlier close than we normally do. It is done for astrological reasons. So you'll also learn how to plan for things in your life, whether that is your wedding, whether that is a launch for your business or a website, whether you want to pitch to the New York Times, you want to ask for investors for your startup, whatever it is that you would like to do, plan a trip, move, all of these things, you'll be able to understand how to, you will have the tools. I can't say that you'll be able to understand it because that is where the empowerment part comes in. I will share the tools with you and you have to integrate and work with them. And so, aloha Camila. Aloha from Maui to Oahu. So it's enrolling now. Doors are closing on the 20th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. If you're in Hawaii, that is 11 a.m. No, that is 10 a.m. for us. And what else? Oh yes, we have made a brand new pay in full bonus. So when you choose to join us and you sign up and you pay in full, you will receive the most gloriously beautiful birth chart printed and mailed to you. I just posted pictures of it in my Instagram, and you'll receive your personal birth chart that it has exactly the snapshot of what was that air ceremony for you when you began your earth journey. And you will also receive, this is incredible, she's totally added to this. She's added a little paragraph description about each of, as I understand it, about each of the planets in your chart and where they are in your chart. It's like totally having a little mini reading for you to reference as you continue to move through the course and integrate the material. It's like the best thing ever. And then you will also receive a beautiful chart of all of the planets and their signs. And that is something that everybody prints out on their own anyway. So it's so wonderful to have a beautiful one. And you can frame your chart and hang it up. Some people have their diplomas framed. I burned all my diplomas, but I have my astrology chart framed because this is the medicine. Saturn return. Oh, good. You were just typing a question about that. This whole live stream has been synchronicity. You were just speaking about these topics today. Amazing. If you were typing anything else, it cut off after today. So yeah, come join us for the Astro Empowerment journey over the next 6 months. We begin, so doors are closing this Friday, 12/20 at 12 p.m. Pacific time, and our adventure begins on January 2nd, and we go through the end of June. So it's January through June is our adventure, but doors are closing this Friday if you would like to get on. The spaceship is leaving soon. So, see if there are any more questions, and then we'll go. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here. If you do have any questions that you would like for me to go over on our next Instagram Live, I'm going to be doing several this week. Maybe I will make a schedule. I just kind of do it whenever I feel inspired. What is the time commitment? The time commitment for Astro Empowerment is totally up to you. The videos, so you get, it's different amounts of content for each module. And there are 12 modules with bonus modules for eclipses and other things that come up that I want to share with you guys. I always like to leave myself space to share whatever I want with you all. So the total amount of content that you get is, what do we say? 37 videos. That's over 23 hours of content. So, and that 23 hours of content over the course of 6 months is totally doable as far as time commitment. It's meant to be, Astro Empowerment is totally an empowering course. And so what that means is that I share with you everything I know, and as astrology is a massive topic that you will never finish learning about, which is my favorite thing, I also share with you books and resources and websites and apps and all the things that you can use to learn more for yourself. And so the amount of time, yes, there's 23 hours of videos that's broken down into 37 videos that you will receive over the course of 6 months, one module at a time. Each module contains multiple videos, sometimes 1, sometimes 7, or sometimes 12. But the amount of time that it really takes is up to you, because you are empowering yourself. I mean, like, I read my astrology books almost every day. I definitely check my astrology on my phone, on the apps that I use every single day. I read probably 2 different Instagram accounts and for my daily astrology, and I also ask Alexa what my horoscope is for the day every day. I also get an email. So I'm like totally obsessed with astrology. You read something about Comet Hale-Bopp as well as other comets having something that coincides with star seeds. That is, hey April, that is I'm not totally sure about that. Comets are not something that is covered in this class, and comets are not something that is part of my personal astrology practice yet. Maybe it will be in the future. We definitely work with asteroids and dwarf planets, and something huge like, Hale-Bopp Comet is a huge astrological event that did happen during the time when many starseeds were born. So we could totally read into that. If you'd like to book a session, I'd totally love to take a look at your chart and see how that works for you. But comets are not something that we are covering in the class. It is meant to be an all levels class, and as we said, astrology is this massive subject that we are here to learn about for lifetimes, because astrology is just meant to be a part, just like the air that we breathe. It's meant to be an integrated part of how we interface with the world is that we are aware of the different planetary frequencies, the archetypes, and the attributes, how we are subconsciously acting out the astro drama that is in our chart, and how other people are acting out that astro drama. And so it really, learning astrology, remembering the language of the stars, is really a deep dive into the subconscious motivating factors that drive all of us. And the more that we work with the subconscious patterning, the more that we become more aware, the more conscious we become, the more enlightened we become, and the more compassionate we become for understanding what we are going through and what our brothers and sisters are going through, and how to support each other in moving through those planetary initiations and for working with those frequencies. So I am so happy to be able to share this opportunity with you to join us for the Astro Empowerment course. If you have any other questions about astrology in general, I will be coming on and doing Instagram lives many other times this week. And so if you have a particular question you would like for me to answer, please type it in the comments on one of my recent posts about the course, and I'll be happy to address that for you. Here to serve, here to inspire, here to help you to remember the language of the stars that is glittering inside of your DNA. As above, so below. We are all in this together. Okay, my shining ones, star family, magic tribe, I love you so much. And I hope that this was helpful. And yeah, get a session if you want, and sign up for the class too, because sessions are great, but learning how to fish will feed you for a lifetime. Okay, love you, bye.